it's been teaching me this whole way just how to be more honest with myself. And it's made me feel so much better about myself and more confident. I mean, I'm absolutely the most confident that I've ever been in my entire life now.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 169. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a wonderful episode with Alice and Sam.
Yeah, they reached out to us actually because they are close friends with a former guest of ours, Clayton and Danielle from way back in the day, back in the 30s.
Episodes 30 something, yeah.
And they're found each other on Instagram and have really created like an amazing community of friends and a network of amazing people around the world using their Instagram accounts. And so this conversation is all about building friendships, building networks, and really just living a life that is open to experiences of all different kinds. It's not just about Instagram by any stretch of the imagination. So we hope you enjoy it. It's fantastic. We took a lot away from it, and they're fantastic people. So thank you, Alice and Sam, for coming on and being vulnerable with us.
Yes, thank you so much. And before we jump into the show, we do have our couple of quick announcements. First up, we had our last virtual meet and greet last Saturday in February, and that was amazing. We had over 40 people join, and it was a lot of fun. The next virtual meet and greet we will have is going to be on Thursday, March 18th at 6 p.m. Pacific or 9 p.m. Eastern. So we'll talk more about that in future episodes, but if you're wanting to go sign up, links are on our webpage, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, on the meet and greet tab. And these are $10 and they're open to anyone.
And thank you to everybody who showed up. We had a great time. It was super fun, and we've got a ton of great feedback from all of you. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Showing up and making it a great Saturday evening for us.
Yeah, it'd be pretty boring if it was just us.
Well, hey, what the hell?
I meant like as far as a meet and greet.
That hurts a little bit.
I didn't mean it like that. I meant it's a meet and greet. We can't meet and greet with people if it's just us two. We already know each other.
Yeah, that's what you meant.
That is what I meant.
So a huge shout out and another huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Just a couple of quick dates and announcements, because tonight, March 20... No, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Tonight, February 24th. Yes. February 24th tonight is our monthly Q&A discussion group. We do two of them. We do one on the East Coast at 9 p.m. Eastern and one for the West Coast at 9 p.m. Pacific. You can join either or both. We'd love to see you there. They're just a really great way to build community and connect with people. So there's still time to join if you're looking to do that. The other thing is we have a women's group call coming up on March 3rd, men's group call coming up on March 23rd. And all of the information to how to join and more about what Patreon is and how you can help support the show, head over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the Patreon button.
Yes. And our last quick announcement is that you may have noticed over the last few months, we have been doing another series that have come out on Fridays called Power of Witness. And this is a group coaching series that we did with Catherine of Expansive Connection. It launched on January 15th, and there's 6 episodes. So go listen. We really want you to go check it out. We'd love to hear what you think. It's powerful, and Finn and I got so much out of this experience as well. And we weren't even one of the couples like on the hot seat, I guess, being coached. So it was amazing. You're going to just please go check it out. And if you want to join a future group of Catherine's Power of Witness that's not going to be on our podcast, you can get a discount and learn more by going to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and clicking on the show notes for this podcast episode.
Yep. And you can also just get to all of this information in the show notes of your podcast player.
Yep.
We've got links down there directly to the show notes. And yeah, with that. Oh, also one quick thing just to mention, links to all of the Instagram accounts and everything for Sam and Alice and other people they mentioned will be in the show notes. So if you're interested in learning more about them, seeing photos of the amazing, beautiful places that they talk about,
Go check it out.
You're going to go check that out and follow them on Instagram. And I think that's all we have to say. And we will see you all on the other side. And we hope you enjoy this conversation.
Let's go. Well, welcome, Sam and Alice. We're excited to have you on the show. I know you reached out to us a little while ago, and we're excited to finally make it happen. So thank you.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know very little about you, and presumably most of the listeners know even less. Do you mind introducing yourselves for everybody, and then we can maybe get into your story a little bit?
Sure. I'm Alice.
And I'm Sam.
We've been together almost 4 years. So living together, not married, by choice.
Mm-hmm. Both been divorced twice. When we got together, we really decided that we would make our own rules, for how we wanted our relationship to be. Now that wasn't immediate at the very beginning, but some things were pretty clear to us that they were going to be different. And because we decided that we really could write our own rules, that's really sort of changed everything for us as a relationship is concerned. So it's been a great relationship in that way, like true partnership.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind talking about like when you two came together and like what that conversation looked like, and maybe what was the catalyst for wanting to come in and rewrite or throw out the rules, so to speak?
I think I was more of the catalyst in that. I had been dating for, I think, about 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years or so, by the time that we met. And I had done some poly relationships, and I had gotten involved with Sex Positive Los Angeles and just gone to a lot of discussions and some events and just exploring different relationship types, and had come, because through my failed monogamous relationships, I was like, okay, where is my piece in this, and what do I need to do differently? And I had come to the understanding that strict monogamy was not going to work for me. I didn't exactly know what it looked like. On our first date, I told him, I was like, I can't do strict monogamy. I was like, I don't know what that looks like. It'll depend on who I'm with and how we build that. But you need to know that going forward, if anything's going to happen here, that's where I stand with.
Yeah, she made it pretty clear that I would not be the last person that she ever slept with, in our relationship. So that was an easy one to sort of like draw a line on. Like, okay, all right, I get that. So,
and Sam, had you ever been exposed to anything like that in the past?
Oh, no. It was strict monogamy, vanilla, serial relationships all the way through to marriages. And it was the furthest thing from my mind, quite frankly.
Yeah. So were you kind of surprised at that point, or were you able to roll with it?
Oh, yeah. No, it was like score. Oh, my God. It was like, I can't believe it. It really actually was unbelievable at the time because just what I had gone through in my relationships. And I didn't really understand what was working, what wasn't working. I just knew that I wasn't happy. I knew that I just felt like there was a deeper connection that could happen between people. And it just wasn't happening in my marriages or any other relationships that I was in. So independent of non-monogamy, it was just not having like that deep connection with somebody. And I really didn't feel like I had it, even through the marriages. So on our first date, it was what do we want to call our first date?
The first date didn't feel like a first date to me.
We didn't kiss,
I wasn't sure if he was interested.
Yeah.
So
it was brunch, but we talked about a lot of like failures and stuff. And so it was really just good, healthy conversation that we had, but it wasn't like that love connection though, that happened right away. So kind of backtracking in the story a little bit. So where we actually met was at a Christmas party, and my friend who was hosting the Christmas party, a very good friend of mine, he didn't introduce us directly, but it was by pure coincidence that Alice was even at the party. So just sort of looking at our timelines and where we were in our lives, and the fact that we even met was pretty much like 1,000,000 to 1 shot that we would have even ever met. So, kind of going back to the story where we met, this particular Christmas party, It's my friend's been having it every year, and I would just sort of attend. And I'll let Alice explain her side of the story.
How I ended up there.
Mm-hmm.
I committed myself to a year of saying yes to as many things as I could. I was working just kind of temp jobs in my field, and I was spending a lot of time at one particular location. Befriended a coworker, and this was like in May, invites me on a cruise at the end of October. Yes. And then that cruise turns out to be a lesbian cruise. So I'm just like, all right, we're going for it. And on that cruise, there was his friend was there, and she thought, oh, straight guy, going to play wing woman. Wasn't the case because he was married and they were celebrating a friend's birthday. But we befriended each other. I get invited to the Christmas party, which is 5 hours away from where I live. But I'm like, all right, yes, let's go. So I show up to this Christmas party in Northern California where I know one person who I've spent a handful of minutes with on this cruise. And that's where we met.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
We didn't hit it off right away, too. It wasn't like the love connection kind of thing. It was, I don't know. I mean, it was just friendly and all, but nothing really sort of sparked at that time. So,
yeah. I love that mentality, though. I was like, that you're like, yeah, I'm just going to say yes to things that I wouldn't normally say yes to. And that it's led you, into a 4-year relationship that has redefined what relationships look like for both of you.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing, too, is I think just where I was in my life, I had been about 3 years out of a divorce, my second divorce, and I had really sort of found myself after my second divorce. And looking back, I had a huge sort of personal renaissance and personal growth. So if we had met at any other time, even in our lives, I don't think we would have connected either. I don't think there would have been the same kind of interest. So, it just really felt like all the odds in the world just sort of were like pulling for us to actually meet at this one particular point in time, and then, things to go the way they went.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you said it wasn't really like love at first sight, but like, how did that relationship develop? You had a first date of brunch, and where did it go from there?
Well, I think the key thing is we talked about how we both get bored easily. And so at the end of brunch, I sent him a text and I was like, you don't bore me.
So I was like, oh, it's on. Right? And so, because I was living in Northern California and she was living in Southern California. And I happened to be in Southern California at the time, visiting family. And so I was like, what are you doing this next weekend? And it's like, oh, I'm free Saturday. So I stayed through the next week and we went out Saturday. Had a good time. She kind of led me to finally kiss her, and I was being kind of shy. I was being the nice guy and everything. But then things just sort of accelerated from there. I mean, we went back to where I was staying, and she's like, "You want to come back to my place till Monday?" I was like, grab my backpack, toothbrush, I'm out. So we had a 48-hour long second date. So the thing that was different though, what changed everything for me, the game changer for me, was that with Alice, the first night we spent together, she made me feel emotionally safe. And I had never felt that sexually before. I had always been heavily in my head about things, even in my marriages. I never felt comfortable. I never felt like I was in a sense there or present or ready. It was always like I had a performance or I had to do things the right way. And I never really understood that about myself. And on that first night that we spent together, I got a lot of stage fright. So things slowed down. And she simply said, she just goes, "It's okay. We'll be okay." And immediately I relaxed. And I just realized that she was just being very empathetic to what was going on and sensitive to it. And for me, that just opened me up. Right? I was like, wow, here's somebody who just treated me like I've never been treated before. And because of that just sort of opened up a whole different world for me, a whole different view. And since that point, I've really taken a different look at even just relationships and opening myself up and being vulnerable and understanding really what that means. Because in hindsight, with all my insecurities, I have a ton of things that were just holding me back. and I thought I was always doing the right thing. But and now in hindsight, it was clear that I was hiding a lot of fear, and that just lowered, I guess, the walls for me. And so that's what changed. And almost immediately I realized that Alice was somebody who I could trust emotionally. And from there, I think that's where everything started to turn now, where I realized, God, we can just sort of build things then on our own because I trust her. And now I could throw out ideas that I was always scared to talk about in my marriages, whether it was sexually or just other adventures we go on. So I went from that point to saying, okay, so what next? Non-monogamy. I'm feeling safe emotionally. I had never been skinny dipping before, and just as background, being Asian, it's culturally, it's something that just doesn't happen a lot. It's what I call a white people sport, which, most people that I know who are white have gone skinny dipping, and most people
since high school.
Yeah. Most people of color, probably not. They probably haven't done skinny dip. So that's kind of funny. But anyway, so it started with that. And so then we took these baby steps through the relationship. So we ended up going to some local hot springs. And that was my first experience being naked in public. And then from there, we went to Black's Beach in San Diego. And that was now a lot more public, a lot more people. And for me, that was huge too. That was huge steps. And Alice had already been through this before. So she was kind of being my guide. But we still hadn't done anything else beyond that, outside of our relationship. And so then it started to come to that point of like, okay, what's our next step now? And Alice goes, I don't know. I've never done this before, right? I haven't guided anybody. I don't know what to do. And then I was
I didn't have a plan.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So what do we do? So we ended up starting a little bit of research. We looked into Sex Positive LA, Los Angeles, which is a great organization. Went to a couple events with them. But then, how do I explain it? It's like, it just sort of skyrocketed. I got confident, I got really, really confident about where everything was going. And suddenly, our next trip we book is we're going to Desire, right? So
no, we went to Ibiza first.
Oh, that's right. I left out a huge part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The torture garden in Ibiza.
That's right. So you can talk about that. I've been talking for a while.
Before Desire,
that's right.
We ended up going. We were just we were going to Ibiza, and we took a detour through London. And there's an event called the Torture Garden there. So we were just looking up alternative events in London and stumbled across it. And it's a huge latex and fetish event. And so we decided to give that a try.
That's right.
While we were there. And so that was...
I forgot about that. So much has happened since then, I guess. I don't know.
We detoured through London. We go to this event. And BDSM isn't really... We like being around the environment. We're not heavily participators, but we love the openness and the creativity and just being around the culture of it.
And seeing how free people are. When you go to something like that and everybody's able to express themselves freely and openly, you really feel a different energy. And that was really eye-opening for us. We thought, wow, okay, now we're starting to connect the dots here of being able to express yourself freely and openly, and being able to be around other people who fully accept you, no matter however you go, right? Whether we're in latex or whether we were in other gear, or even if we were just naked, it doesn't matter, and that was also a big moment for us too, a game changer, realizing that there's this whole other way and culture that we could get ourselves into. So then,
from London to Ibiza,
we did London to Ibiza, as J-Lo says.
Yes.
And we were looking for nude beaches, and we found a couple, and we started taking some pictures. And then at that moment, we're like, God, we can't post this though on Instagram. She's naked, right? And,
well, I mean, you can, but I don't want my sister to see everything.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we didn't want to put it on the personal account.
It's kids.
Yeah, good point. So we ended up starting up sort of our own private, naughty Instagram account. We were anonymous. We didn't show our faces, but it started to be really fun, because then we realized, we're going to go take some pictures in different places, and whether we were in our latex costumes or whether we were in naked on the beach, let's post this stuff. Yeah, that's kind of cool. And then we get back home, and we ended up in Lake Tahoe also as well. I don't know if you know, but there's a fantastic clothing optional beach in Lake Tahoe. It's marvelous. It's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Oh man, you get the vistas of the mountains, and for the nudist community, it's pretty well known. But we kind of stumbled onto it by accident, just by Googling like nude beaches in Tahoe, and there was one. I was like, oh shit! All right,
We'll have to check that out.
yeah, yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, summertime probably you want.
The water's cold.
The water's kind of cold, but.
So I was just curious, really quick, just to interrupt you.
Yeah.
How long into your relationship was the trip to Ibiza?
5 months.
5 months. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of curious because, like, right, you said on date number 1, Alice was like, it's not going to be straight monogamy for me. But it also sounds like it wasn't like, hey, it's not going to be straight monogamy. The next night it's an orgy. It sounds like you two really worked together to create the safety for each other to allow that to develop and it sounds like it was a slow, it was a nude beach and then a fetish party and then more nude beaches. It wasn't like 0 to 100.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. It was a progression, a pretty natural progression. But it's funny that I kind of fast forwarded to Desire because in my mind, that was at the end of summer. So within
7 months,
7 months or so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that summer was quite busy for us. A lot of new experiences.
But before you booked your trip to Desire, had you had any experiences with other people, be it individually or together as a couple?
When we were in Ibiza at the club one night, I did kiss another gentleman with his consent. And so that was the only thing that had happened before Desire.
And it was interesting too, because at first I was like all for it. I thought, okay, cool. I'm good with this. And then by the end of the night, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And then afterward, I was feeling really bad about it. It was a ton of anxiety kicked in. Afterward, we had gone back to the hotel and we ended up taking like a 2-hour shower together, actually,
just
to start talking about like how we're going to do this. Because if I'm feeling this way now, just about you kissing somebody, there's a lot. I still got a lot to get through, and it was kind of a good and bad moment at the same time. But I felt so much confidence, though, that we could do it, that we could do it together, right? So we sort of took that as a positive step in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that you can talk about it and have those conversations, be vulnerable and say, like, I'm feeling this way, and then have a 2-hour conversation about it. Like, that's really important because it sets that safe space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And too, like, Alice had not had she hadn't gone through that test that you just went through, right? Like, it was, you were the one who watched her kiss somebody else, not vice versa. So, like, there's still that potential hanging out there that could be an issue. Oh yeah. No, I had a lot, I think, of growth to go to. She was certainly, up here and I was still several steps behind. But at the same time too, I mean, it's been over 3 years now, but we really did understand too, though, you still can't go faster than the slowest person in the relationship. That was kind of always our guideline, is that we'll move at the pace of the slowest person. Right. Yeah. And I think just being conscious of that, wherever we were at, somebody's got to take the first step, but we're still holding hands, right? Somebody else to help the other person across the next chasm. And we did it together. I think at first the thought was maybe we wouldn't, right? She'd be able to see whoever she wanted to. I would try to explore on my own. And we really didn't have a plan, at the very beginning. But then as we went through a few more experiences, we realized this is going to be actually a lot better going together. It's going to be more fun. I think it's going to be more rewarding. So. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how is Desire? Yeah. We're dying to know. Okay. It actually turned out great. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. We had about 4 nights there, I think. Mm-hmm. We met a couple from Canada, from Quebec, and they were super nice. They had been with some other people before, and they had gone maybe every year to Desire. And we did. And the funny thing is, there was, obviously it's Desire, so there was a lot of other couples there. And we just weren't really clicking with them. It felt intimidating being there your first time. And we came in on like midweek. So people had already been there and already formed their little groups that they're hanging out with. And so it felt intimidating in that sense. So our first day, we kind of were like, we're just going to stay in the corner over here by myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And plus Alice just likes being naked. So that was easy, right? She was just, being naked around the pool and stuff like that and socializing that way. But we really, I think we're looking for just a little more solid connection, right? For people who kind of understood where we were at and
And it was funny too, because we started talking to some other people and we really felt like we kind of got a cold shoulder. It was really weird. And we don't really know why per se, but we just don't actually feel like we're lifestyle, in the sort of the traditional sense. We're much more into forming, I think, closer relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
We want to hang around cool people and have great conversation and have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And sex is never expected. And if it happens, it's a bonus, but we would much rather enjoy your friendship and your company versus, just coming into a situation and being
Yeah.
But and I guess with a lot of lifestyle, at least when we've been around things that are lifestyle heavy, whether it's a takeover or anything like that, people will come up and talk to you and they'll introduce themselves and they'll have like a quick little 30-second conversation with you. But it feels like if they don't want to fuck you, they don't want to continue to have a conversation with you.
No.
And for us, that's a turnoff of being in those kind of scenes. And so I think we just find more connection in alternative situations versus like a very lifestyle heavy event.
Yeah, because we're really not great at dating, I guess you could say, right? We don't we are on Cassidy. We have a profile, and we haven't actually met anybody in person live through Cassidy over a year and a half or so being there. We've connected with some people. We've talked about connecting, but it just doesn't gain any momentum for us.
Right.
So that kind of takes us to a different path. It took us on a different path. And when we had posted the pictures of Alice being in Ibiza, being naked, and also in Lake Tahoe, we posted a picture. About 3 weeks later, we went into our Instagram account, and suddenly we had gone from about 100 followers to over 1,000 overnight. And we're just like, what the fuck just happened, right? Holy shit. And then we realized like one of the larger Instagram sites had reposted her picture from Tahoe. And it's a gorgeous picture. She's naked in the lake, and and you can see the mountains and the
typical white girl naked pose.
Yeah, the big. She's just she's waving at nobody, right? And we're like, oh,
there's a whole community of people out here.
Yeah, because then we started following other accounts, and we realized it's not lifestyle. It was nudism, but that just resonated with us better, because it was more of a commonality about and fun, really, just being like naked in nature. And so there's all these other sites, people taking pictures on top of mountains with their buns out, right? And we started talking with a few people, and we started to realize after a little while and figure out like who are real couples versus people who are just reposting other pictures. And that led us to actually making some of our now best friends that we ever had. It was fascinating to us that through Instagram, we have actually made some incredible friends. We've, just a few accounts like Fight Pouring Marriages. We met them through Instagram. And I know they've been on a podcast before, but the fact that we connected with them, we were chatting with them, and they said, hey, why don't you come on out and come out for a visit? Because we realized pretty quickly that, they were a legit and genuine couple, and we just sort of hit it off right away. And so we did. And we just took a chance, flew out, met them. And the first thing we did is we stopped at a canyon near their house and took a naked picture. That's it. There was nothing, there was no sex implied. It was nothing like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a sexual chemistry. It was more like just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
to this day, they're some of our dearest friends.
Yeah, some of our dearest friends now. And so that sort of snowballed into us meeting probably 8 or 9 other couples to it.
A year.
Yeah.
Like we met like a dozen couples one year.
Oh yeah, in 1 year. Yeah, in real life.
In real life.
Yeah.
Like even in Italy, we met up, like even around the world, other parts of the world, we meet up with people.
Malta,
even.
Yeah.
And so this is all through Instagram.
Through Instagram, yeah.
In Iceland?
Actually, Iceland was the key. So the reason why we connected with Fight Pouring Marriages was that we ended up going to Iceland, and a few years back, I don't know if you remember, but WoW Airlines was advertising really cheap flights, $99 round trip or whatever, $20 round trip. So we're going to go. We're just going to go. It was still like the first day of spring or last day of winter or something. We just booked it. But we'd been looking through Instagram, and Alice had found an account for the Icelandic naturist, and had just sent him a note and say, hey, we're going to come to Iceland. We'd love to find some hot springs, especially where we can be naked. and started up a whole conversation. And by the end of the conversation, he's like, well, when you guys get in, we'll meet for a beer, And we're like, holy shit, we can meet people around the world just with sort of this commonality of just nudism, right? And we did. We flew into Reykjavik, met him, talked for like 2 or 3 hours, and just kind of found out. We actually kind of had a perception that he'd be some like old 60-year-old white guy with like,
he doesn't show his face.
He doesn't show his face or anything. Yeah. And turns out he was actually very close to our age. Really nice guy, super genuine and everything, and give us some suggestions. And then by the end of that conversation that night, he's like, I'd love for you to meet my wife, and we really would like to take you to our favorite secret hot springs. We're like, wow, right, okay. So we ended up meeting them about 5 days later, and they took us to this place. It was in the middle of a lava fields, like, not hot lava, of course. But it was like, there's hot springs coming up. There was right on the edge of the ocean. This is the middle of winter too. So it's literally freezing, but it's sunny out. And we meet his wife for the first time. And we actually just hung out, right?
For probably like 6 hours.
6 hours just sitting in these hot springs in the middle of Iceland. I know.
Chatting.
And we're just dumbfounded, just like how we were able to connect with people, such genuine, nice, cool people so quickly and easily. And we realize is because through nudism, less about lifestyle, that because we were so open, because we had lowered these barriers, and when you're meeting people naked for the first time, especially without sort of an attitude or an expectation around sex, it makes it very different, right? Because you can really sort of talk about anything in your life, and you don't feel judged, right? You feel welcomed. You feel that people are genuinely interested in who you are, because, as they say in nudism, when you're naked, there's no labels, right? There's no levels. There's no status. Yeah. And so you have no idea who you're talking to. But because you're being so vulnerable and being naked around other people, you kind of get to know, I think, more of the true people themselves. So we never felt like we were trying to impress them or anything. It was just really good, genuine conversation about travel and the world, and them being Icelandic and us being Americans, just different perspective on things. So that really snowballed. And the tie-in to that was that Alice had posted some pictures. We took off to some remote area, and she was naked standing on a rock in front of a waterfall kind of thing. And we got a comment from Fight Pouring Marriages, and they said, well, we're going to go to Iceland this summer. And we're like, got any tips? And we're like, sure. And so we started the conversation that way. And so who knew, just based on one picture that we posted and one comment, and just the way that we interacted through Instagram, we became online friends and then became friends in real life. So, yeah.
And it's all right. And I think what you touched on really early on was the whole point of that was you had these conversations with people who wanted to get to know you. And the reason that they were talking to you wasn't so they could have sex with you. And therefore, they didn't become disinterested quickly, right? It wasn't like, oh, well, you're not hot enough, so we don't really want to talk to you and get to know you because sex isn't an option. And with these connections, it was, we want to get to know you and become friends, and then maybe sex becomes an option, but maybe it doesn't.
Right.
It was sort of inverting the process.
I mean, amongst the people that we've met, we most often sex never occurs and it stays as friendship. There have been cases where things have happened with some people that we have met. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, it might be a lot of like just sexy situations even, but not necessarily cross play, but everyone's comfortable enough, at least in their own relationships and in their own bodies, where you can be in sexy situations together and not necessarily even have to have sex with other people. Mm-hmm. And we just seem to resonate more with those kinds of environments.
Yeah, it's just kind of how it's evolved, right? It started with them, and then we met other people, and we started to sort of open the group up to a few more people we connected with. Another couple in Denver who make adult films, and we're like, they're interested in us. It was really, really fascinating. I mean, but I think it was more on the personal connection happened first, right? Yeah. And so as that grew, we realized that it became more of a community, and because we started out without the assumption of sex, but instead having a safe space for everybody, and specifically women too, as creating a safe space for women is one of the most rewarding things when being in relationships, because it allows them to be free and not feel like, as the expression goes, thinking that every guy in the room wants to fuck you, right? Not having that sense makes you feel just more relaxed and more open and free. And to be able to share that among friends is really rewarding now, because we have a core group of friends now with, we can call it 10, 12 of us, who we feel 100% comfortable with. We would, in a sense, trust our emotional lives with. And that has really been, I think, the biggest, I keep saying reward, but it's true. We're so grateful and that we've been able to evolve it this way and do it on our own terms too, right? It's not forced. It wasn't like we showed up at an event and we all became friends. This has been over time where we went at a pace where everybody was comfortable.
And I think even as adults, it's really hard to make new friends because generally your friend circle comes from coworkers or people that you went to school with. And so to be adults coming from two different even parts of the country in a different city that you've never lived in before, making new adult friendships is just really even something amazing in itself, because that is not it's not an easy feat.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And I know it's not very good for podcast audience, but I've been nodding like a bobblehead over here for the last 25 minutes.
So have I.
And yeah, everything you two are saying is just, it's so up our alley and so true. And the whole piece about, making friends, and it's really hard. Like you said, you have friends maybe from school that's, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you're not the same person you were then. And maybe they're not the same people they were then, but it's not that you're not their friend, but like, it's almost like you can't find new friends because everybody's already found their friends. And you're like, well, I can't be their friend. They've already got their friends because obviously they're in their 30s or 40s. They've got all their friends they need. And when you start really digging into it, you realize that that's not how the world works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting too, because it really rewrites what friendships mean too. So for me, there's this core group of people that I love dearly, every single one of them. But it's different than the relationships that I've had for 30 years. But, and it's not, and it doesn't diminish the relationships that I already had, for 30 years. It's just provided me a way to connect with people that I never really realized that I could. And it's been amazingly fun. It's been really, really fun. Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious, kind of like what you've explained your whole dynamic, I guess, the last 4 years. Where do you consider yourself now? And where do you want to go with your relationship?
Currently, we're at a place where we have enough experience and trust that he's allowed to do as he sees fit for him without permission. And I'm allowed to do what I see fit for me without permission. There's not really, I don't see myself at the moment as taking on necessarily any kind of poly type role or anything like that. But we don't have any rules or guidelines or category that we feel we fit into.
Yeah, I guess we don't see ourselves as necessarily poly, but we have a lot of very good relationships. I guess in some other ways you could call it poly. We like the idea of going to lifestyle events and being around things like that. And because there's a lot of fun, but we don't really seek that out. We don't, have our calendar full of, well, nobody has a calendar full of things right now, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle, where we're just looking to make nice genuine connections with people and seeking out those kind of individuals. And because once you realize that people are, again, seeking the genuine people, they're good with themselves. You can sense it. You can sense that if they're good with themselves and then they're also very good with their partners, it's much easier to sort of fold into the same sort of group and dynamic. And then you immediately also see the opposite, where if you see somebody who's struggling emotionally, or you see a couple who's struggling emotionally, the red flags, fly a lot easier too. And we know to sort of back off from that too. So it's, so for us, I think that's why we're trying not to put too much of a label on it of what we are, where we're at. It's more that through the first couple of years, it really did evolve from me, having never skinny dip to the point of a very distinct moment where, I hit compersion, and for me, that was like an amazing moment when that happened. And
It was an amazing moment for me too.
yeah. So the story is,
Yeah, I was going to say, let's hear
I
it.
know.
And really quick, I just wanted, before you do that, I just wanted to say, like, I think what the way you described it is perfect. And one of the things that we have really been trying to move away from here on the show is like getting rid of the labels, because sometimes they're helpful, right? Sometimes they're a really good starting point, but really they're just a good starting point for a conversation. And then that leads us to like, tell us what it actually looks like. And you two have described that so perfectly. And yeah, it doesn't fit into any box. And I think that's something that we love about it. And we're excited to hear more about it.
It could change tomorrow. I mean,
exactly. And
without
that's
the label, it can change at whatever moment you need it to change in one direction or another. Yeah,
exactly. And that's hard, even if the label is, descriptive, not prescriptive, or however people like to say that. Like, if you're like, we're swingers, and then all of a sudden one of you starts to develop feelings, you'd be like, well, I can't do that. We're swingers, right? But even if you actually can do that, it's hard. It's hard to break out of a label that you've given yourself, even if it's kind of arbitrary.
Right. Yeah. And when we talk to other people, whether they are in the lifestyle or not, or poly or not, it's much easier to not go that route, to try to find that connection and commonality. Like, oh, you're lifestyle people, so we'll do lifestyle things. Let's go meet for a drink and maybe go on a date, kind of stuff. And it just never feels right to us, to go that route.
Right. So compersion.
Thank you.
Yeah, story.
Good job keeping that to that story. So we had mentioned that we had met another couple through Instagram, those who make adult films and they're based out of Denver, and they had invited us out for a weekend just to go hang out, and we'd met them before.
Once before.
Actually twice, because we did the photo shoot time. Oh, anyway, doesn't matter. A couple of times we met before, and it was a weekend full of just random things. So one part of it was that they were going to do a photo shoot for some of their some of their talent, some of their stars. Another was just going to like a dance party rave sort of thing going on. And so that the day of the photo shoot was really, really cool, because they had a few of their actors there doing really cool stuff. They had an artist that was also providing some really interesting backdrops and colors to the overall photo shoot. It's called Liquid Light. So it has this it's an overhead projector, literally, with different colored oils and lights that put some really neat background and colors on things. And it was funny because as soon as we walk into the house, I see this artist and I look over at Alice and I go, "Oh, you're going to want to fuck him, right?" And she's like, "Yes." And so the whole kind of like feeling of that it wasn't like forcing on him, but we really felt very comfortable in expressing any sort of flirtiness, and to any degree of flirtiness with that, because the people that were there, and that was already great. And I had even told them, even at the end of the weekend, I said I really appreciated this other couple, because I really felt like they created a safe space to be flirty at any degree that you wanted to, and that helped us in our relationship, in our connection, to also feel confident that we were in safe hands too. So not only was it a safe space for Alice to express herself, it was even for myself too, to feel confident that there's other people looking out for each other too. And with that, the day kind of evolved, and by the end of the evening, there was 3 guys, including myself, and just Alice. And so things got a little more friendly, and suddenly she was riding on top of the artist, and me and the other guy were kind of like watching. We're like, this is interesting. This is going somewhere, right? And all of a sudden, Alice is you can just see a big orgasm happening. It's just building and building and building. It's like a tsunami. And I lean over to the other guy. I'm like, oh, she's going to have a good one. Watch this, right? And she has like this massive orgasm. I mean, just like, whoa. It's like, oh, whoa. She just keeps going and going. And finally she's done, and she like collapses and falls off. And it's literally like riding off the horse, right? And she just collapses, like, right, falls to the side. And she's got a big grin on her face. And then somehow she musters some energy, and then she gets with the other guy, and he happens to have quite a large penis. He's, I'm an average size guy, but he was
not average size.
Not average size, no. And so that happens, and it was just like really cool though. It wasn't a moment where I was jealous. There wasn't a moment where I was scared. I didn't have any sort of. I didn't feel inadequate in any sort of way. I thought it was just really, really cool that everybody was showing Alice attention, and she was getting the attention that she wanted. And the fact that it was the whole day had been, I guess you could say, very emotionally safe and exciting and fun with the photo shoots and everything. But then to see it sort of culminate to this point, and I could just see it on her face, how happy and how satisfied and how gratified she was through the whole experience. And me, that was my moment of compersion where I was really just super happy for her. And she got to experience this, and she got to, in a sense, experience all the dicks, And that's our expression with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the dicks.
She had all the dicks. She puts her hand like waves across the whole room. I had all the dicks, which she did. But that was a really cool moment. And that, I think, changed a lot for us too. That threw a lot of confidence into what we had built and where we went and how we went about it, and that we had found people that we felt, again, emotionally safe with, sexually safe with, right? And of course, they're in the industry, so everybody's practicing safe things. Nobody's, it was very
lots of consent, awareness,
yeah, and protection, of course, too. But just in a sense of, it's just like the right way to do it. It was just very mature. It was very respectful, and that, I think, made it even better. And then since that moment, I do bring up that she's had all the dicks. I haven't had all the vaginas, but she's had all the dicks. So someday maybe I'll have all the dicks. I'll have all the vaginas with.
Hey, if you want.
I know. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's super fun.
And I think the thing that stands out to me is probably, and I'm just gonna go out and assume this, that the reason that honestly that Alice was able to have those experiences was because she felt as safe as she did throughout the day and the weekend. The ability to let your guard down and feel that good in front of other people, that's a very vulnerable thing to do. Mm-hmm. And being able to do that comes from that level of safety and security that you can let that guard down. So I think, that's just kind of just reinforcing how important it is to be able to be in those safe spaces and the level of pleasure that you can get when you're there because you're not worried about everything else that could go wrong in a scary situation like that.
Yeah. And I think also too, one of the things we talked about earlier before we started to play with other people is actually developing a way to communicate when we didn't feel safe or we felt uncomfortable. And so Alice had to come up with a pretty ingenious thing of where she would give me a signal, or we would give each other a signal,
a nonverbal
cue that if, for example, if I wasn't comfortable with what was happening with her, I would do this for her. And it was just a little tug on her ear, right? So that way I wouldn't disrupt the whole moment for everybody and make it, kind of a bad moment. Instead of more it would allow her to sort of say, excuse me, I'm going to take off for just a moment and things like that. We haven't had to use it yet, fortunately, but I think it was really good too, because it gave us the confidence then and the mindfulness to have a way that we can get out too without it making each other feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's
yeah,
great
that's
advice.
super important. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the compersion thing, but I'm curious, what are some ways that both of you have seen each other grow through exploring this different relationship dynamic?
I think the being able to talk about how we are attracted to other people and what that attraction is and what we might want to do with other people makes our conversations very, very different, right? In a sense of we can go to bed at night and talk about, oh yeah, that guy that you were talking to, are you attracted to him? Are you interested in him? And she's like, meh, it's okay. But the fact that I can approach her about that and be conscious of that and make her feel comfortable with that, I think is tremendous to support her to pursue things and vice versa.
It seems like the mundane life things are the more difficult things to talk about and to sort out.
Yeah.
Like this just feels so much easier than, the conflicts of children and schools and, like those things
Work,
seem to be the more difficult parts of life.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure. How about you, Alice?
I think it's been amazing to watch Sam come into this with such confidence. And I mean, it's for the most part been a pretty smooth ride as far as any kind of jealousy. And he's very thoughtful and very considerate and takes a lot of time into the words that he wants to say and how situations should be handled, where I'm more of like, let's just go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just like, we'll just show up. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Kind of person.
Sometimes, yeah. Like we had early on, we had a couple of things that taught us some lessons. Like one, I was working overseas for a while. So I was gone for a month at a time or two. And some personal things happened with Alice that were really rough. And we had been at the point where we hadn't gone solo, right? We hadn't done anything with everything that we had, including Desire and our first swap in Desire. We did all that together, and kind of were step by step and side by side when we did that. But then when I was working overseas, there was a moment where she's like, I just need to get laid. I just need to get fucked. And inside I'm like, oh man, this is really, really rough for me. Because I was away. 2, I felt bad that I couldn't support her. 3, I had no idea what was going to happen. Right. But I gave her the green light. I just kind of sucked it up. And as we all try to do and be mindful, it's like, we have to accept that we're going to have feelings afterward, whether it's jealousy, fear, all the normal things. So I accepted that was going to happen, but I told her, go ahead, do what you need to do. I'll kind of bow out and you decide what's best for you. And that was like my first real test of that. And so she met up with the guy and she told me afterward and she goes, okay, all done. Guess you felt better. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good.
I mean, I think our biggest takeaway from my solo play was that we learned about aftercare. And before we hadn't really discussed aftercare and what that would look like for us and what we would need. So our biggest lesson through that was like, oh, we need to figure out how we want to handle things after the situation. Like, what kind of care am I going to want? What kind of care are you going to want? And so that was, we learned a big lesson through that.
Yeah. Really big lesson.
And how do you two, or how did you and how do you now reconnect from a situation like that where you're maybe half a world apart, or even if it's 100 miles apart, one of you goes out, has an experience, and you come home and the other person is not there, and so you have to find a way to reconnect without being physically together.
We haven't had to do that so much, and that is really difficult because the time we had to, especially when he was overseas, it's the time of day where he gets to talk and the time of day where I get to talk made it really difficult. And I had just stress of other things going on. So I wasn't compassionate enough and empathetic enough to really hearing, his feelings and how he felt to be able to give the proper kind of feedback and care. So I think it's just trying to make sure that you can make a time where you can really just listen so the other person can feel like they're heard. Because you can't physically do anything. I mean, physically, when we can come back together after a moment, it's much easier to have the aftercare that you want because you can physically reconnect with each other. And it makes a huge difference from just being able to attempt to verbally reconnect.
Yeah, it was really hard. We actually had 2 times that happened where I was overseas and she had a solo, and I struggled. I struggled a lot. And it wasn't so much that I was like, it was rage or jealousy. It was more that I couldn't be there to sort of close it out, right? In a sense of, I was sure I had the deep anxiety and the fear that comes with that of wow, she's some other guy that I don't know and she, in another case, they, in a sense, just first met, just had sex with him. And funny enough, I mean, she felt great afterwards. She was really missing me after she had sex with him, because she's like, oh, she had a great experience. She had a lot of fun.
I'm one where it's like when I'm with somebody else, it just makes me want to be with him more afterwards.
Yeah.
Like I just want to come and back, and I just want to see you, and I just want to share it with you, and I just want to I feel closer.
Right. And then for me, I'm sitting there, about to walk into work with like this this heavy weight on my mind and trying to resolve all this stuff. And it was a struggle. And so start tying that back to aftercare, we realized that, there's a lot of things we should have talked about before, because we knew it was a possibility going into the situation that she might be sleeping with somebody else. And but we didn't talk about how we wanted to treat each other afterward. And that's where we really learned about aftercare. Aftercare isn't just for her or just for me. It's for both of us. Like how does she want to be treated too as well? How does she want me to react to the fact that she's had sex with somebody else? And especially early on in our lives of being non-monogamous, that's where we learned. And this is long before before I felt compersion for her and being with other people. So, I mean, I don't regret it. I don't regret any of that one bit. And we knew that I was learning lessons, and I never felt like our relationship was in danger. It was just the tremendous amount of stress and anxiety was just something I had not experienced before. And trying to work through that, being on my own, it was just tough. It was just time, and just, it took a good day or two, to kind of get through it. So I don't really have any magic, remedies to how to get yourself down from that level of stress. But the advice that we do give people is really just then planning for aftercare. Talk about what you need after the fact, and then execute on that and do it. Call each other, say these words that you need, say whatever the other person has asked you to do. And I think everybody then feels a little bit better about that. Everybody's still handling the situation the same way. It didn't change us, right? And that's, I think, the important part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important to hear that side of it as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious, kind of how out to other people in your life are you about your relationship dynamic?
Well, it's okay. It's maybe a 2 or 3 parter, but funny story. We weren't going to record the podcast with you at our house
because the kids are home.
The kids are home, so
we're not out to the kids.
We're not out to the kids. That's one moment. Second, we were going to go to my sister's house, and just do it at their house, and but I'm not really out to them either, so then I sent him a text message that I'm like, hey, can we come by your house and maybe do the podcast from your house? And they're like, sure. And then my sister's wife, she goes, oh, what's the podcast about? And I said, oh, it's called Normalizing Non-Monogamy. And then it's like crickets on the other end from like the text. And like, it's like, oh, I guess I just sort of outed ourselves to my sisters. Even though, it's not a surprise. It was just kind of funny. I was like, that's the first time I've actually mentioned that we're non-monogamous to them. But the funny part of the story is that, and it's a long history, kind of go way back. My sister, she actually came out to me as being lesbian a long time ago. And I was the first person in the family that she came out to. And so that was it's kind of a funny moment now that, in a sense, I've kind of come out as non-monogamous, but to my sister. But I imagine, though, we were kind of joking, like, I wonder if back then, if we actually had phones and we could text, that she would have just texted me that she was lesbian. Like, hey, Sam. Hey, Sam, I'm a lesbian. So just, when you meet my partner, don't be surprised.
So
everything's easier over text. That's
yeah.
what I
And as far as my side, my sister knows about the nudism part. I have an aunt who knows about the non-monogamy part. Other than that, my family, I grew up in a very strict, grandpa started a church kind of family. So not having those conversations. I'm very lucky. My circle of friends, they all know. So within my circle of friends, I don't need to censor myself or any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And I'm curious, so did you have more conversations with your sister and not just that text, like crickets on the text message?
Oh, no, yeah, I sent a text back like, oh, and sorry that I kind of gave you that news through a text. But I figured I was going to be talking to people that I've never talked to before, so I might as well let you know too that what it's going to be about. And then responded back to like, no worries, no surprises. Have a great time. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So it's not surprising, actually. I've recently found out a lot more about their lives too. So, it's actually really good. So but it's such a like interesting thing. Like, we're sort of conditioned to try to shield our loved ones sometimes, right? It's a natural reaction to not worry them or not shock them or not surprise them, right? But in the end, you realize that most people are extremely compassionate, and it's really, they're more hurt when you don't tell them or you've hid things from them versus just being open. So it's been teaching me this whole way just how to be more honest with myself. And it's made me feel so much better about myself and more confident. I mean, I'm absolutely the most confident that I've ever been in my entire life now. And I feel like I'm in really the best place I've ever been. So one, it's the relationship. Two, the friends that we've met. And three, just the kind of community we've built. And COVID, in a way, has kind of contributed to that because we've kept it very small. We've kept it to say 3 or 4 couples max. And it's not even that we're playing with them, but we always have like a really good, fun, sexy time with them.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not sure if it's going to go in the show notes or anything, but we can put their Instagram accounts out there if people are just kind of curious to see and poke around and take a look, because they're all, it's Instagram, so it's open. So
yeah,
it's out there.
Yeah. I mean, if they're okay with it being out there, and same for you guys, and that kind of leads into a question of, for anybody who does struggle, like, because your experience at Desire is not uncommon. You show up and you're there in the middle of the week and everybody's already found their friends. And this is maybe even a metaphor for what I kind of talked about in life, where you're like, well, everybody has their friends. Nobody wants to be my friend. So I'm just going to hang out by myself over here. But that's not an uncommon experience. And it's the same if you go to just a lifestyle club sometimes. Like, you get there, and this is why I always want to be one of the first ones there, because then it doesn't give anybody time to make friends before we show up. But like, it's hard. It's hard to break into that. And it sounds like you two found a really great, healthy way to do it through Instagram. And you talked a little bit about it, but do you have any, like, tips or recommendations for somebody who struggles in the Desire and the clubs and these traditional settings, but maybe could utilize a platform like Instagram or something? Yeah.
A little bit of irony. There's been some rumors lately that Instagram is actually going to shut down a lot of accounts that even have just, I guess you can call it safe nudity, where it's just, butt shots only. It hasn't happened. It was supposed to be today, but who knows? But I'd say that the reason why we connect with people through Instagram is because people tend to show a different side of themselves, especially if they're staying mostly anonymous, or if they're comfortable enough, they'll show their face or they'll use their real names. But it's more of a tease, and it's a way to accentuate certain things that you like about yourself, right? Different than like a Cassidy or SDC, where, I mean, frankly, a lot of it's just homemade porn out there, and for us, that it just turns us off. We're not. That's not the only thing we're interested in. We're interested in people. We're interested in people who are comfortable and confident, and especially women who own their sexuality. And that really comes through. And that's really just been an interesting point, that all the friends that we've met and connected with, all the women in these couples really own their sexuality. So, which also means that their partner, and all male partners, support them. So that dynamic for us really works, where the women can be flirty, they can be open, the men are comfortable enough with their partner to allow that flirtiness to happen. But it doesn't have to always turn into sexy, like full sex. There's people who have different types of boundaries, but everybody accepts it, and it really makes it fun and close. So anybody who's looking to do that, if you do start a page, I would certainly say just accentuate the things that you like. It's funny just seeing it, because it's been almost 4 years now, but there's accounts that are purely just, sassy shots of somebody in lingerie, and it's just their bedroom, and that's just all it is. It's just them doing a little bit of like voyeurism type of thing. And there's other people on the other extreme where they're on top of mountaintops naked, or they're diving into icy waters naked and things like that. that sort of sense of adventure. But I think that still shows like the kind of people that they are,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not to say one's better than the other. It's just that if you have an interest in somebody who's, riding a motorcycle in the desert naked, it's like, oh, they look like a lot of fun, right? I want to get to know them. And that's the kind of people we kind of end up connecting with just because, and it's not to say that we're riding, bicycles. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Oh yeah. Naked bicycles riding in the middle of the desert. Yeah. But, so I think if you have interest in that, just say hello to people and be genuine through the conversations. 90% of it is, not those people who are making comments on Instagram. It's people around, you got to remember it's around the world. That's okay. We don't block them. We don't reject them. It's just, you sort of learn really quickly like, who the genuine couples are just by seeing the type of pictures they post and where they are, whether it's a couple or whether it's just a single female.
But I think as far as being out at like a desire or a temptation or on a lifestyle cruise, any of that, in order to feel comfortable, I said, one, get to know your bartender.
Mm-hmm.
They'll know your drink, loosen you up a little bit. But most people who are there, I think, would at least be welcoming to a conversation. And I know it's very difficult for me to start a conversation. Once conversation is started, I will jump in. I will be, I'm not a great initiator, but I'm a great participator.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for me to start things somewhere like that. So I think you just kind of have to just remember that people are going to be nice. They're there because they are also like to be in an open, non-judgmental type of environment. Mm-hmm. And so just try to have a conversation and just know if it doesn't go anywhere, that it's just likely not you or anything personal on your behalf.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah, no, that's some really great tips, I think. And fingers crossed that Instagram doesn't take those accounts down.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm playing it safe right now.
I know.
Yeah.
People kind of slowed down on the posting and stuff like that.
Lots of censorship.
Well, and too, like, you said there's, you probably get a lot of comments on pictures and that type of thing, but it's easy in that environment to kind of, the cream rises to the top pretty quickly. If you're one of the people who like wants to meet other people, right? If somebody comments on your picture and is like genuinely like, oh, that's a beautiful location, looks like so much fun. That's a way different than be like, oh, she's a hot piece of ass. Like those comments are like really set you apart versus, the standard, I don't know.
Fire emoji.
Fire.
Yeah.
I also had one other question and maybe geared towards Alice and kind of actually something that I believe you and Fight Boy Marriages had posted something back a couple months ago where you were talking about how creating the safe space for women is so critical. And I wanted to just maybe from your perspective, Alice, like what is it about the space that you find safe and how is that space created either by Sam and Clayton or just whoever happens to be in that space?
I think a good part of it is anyone who gets invited into our circle or invited to events has generally been vetted fairly well or comes from a recommendation of already meeting someone. So it's often somewhat selective, not in like a snobby kind of way, but just that we need to know that you're real and you're authentic. And we feel that you're going to trust the consideration of everyone who's going to be involved. And then, as Sam had mentioned, all of the women own their sexuality. And so we're all fairly strong personalities in that sense. And knowing that we feel confident enough to handle our own situations. And I know at least when we host any kind of events, I kind of take on more of a motherly role of just making sure that everything's okay and everything is right and keeping an eye out for things. And if that means I have to stay sober for the night, then, I stay sober to be able to just make sure that things are going smoothly. And we both just, make sure that we're aware of the situation and things that are going on.
Yeah. So like kind of leading up to that post it was a great post, by the way. It really hit home with us because toward the end of that weekend in Vegas with them, that's where it came from. We had gotten together, and at the end of it, we just sort of realized that the women were just kick-ass women. That, by letting them sort of pursue and flirt and do what they want, it was actually quite intimidating to people who weren't part of our group. So say out by the pool, just socializing and flirting, and it was, quite frankly, it was intimidating to a lot of guys to sort of see a woman that strong, and also over there pointing, oh, that's my boyfriend right there, right? And sort of that surprise of like, what? Like, but then their curiosity peaked based on like, wait, so this is your boyfriend, and I'm sitting here flirting with you and talking possibly about sex. And like, yeah. So that environment, and knowing that people can, the people who we are with can, I don't want to say roam free, but that's not a very good way to say it. Like they can just sort of pursue situations as they want. It allows, like, for example, allows Alice to choose what she wants to do, and she doesn't feel pressure from me or knowing if I'm looking over her shoulder. And it was really interesting because there was a couple of guys that some of the women had met, and we'd gone back to the room, and we were just socializing in the room. And one of them really took an interest to the whole culture and environment that we had created. And the other one got really intimidated by it. And he actually just had to leave. It was really interesting. And because call it the vanilla world, he's a very attractive guy, muscular, fit, came off as very like wealthy and well-to-do, right? And once he ran into one of our friends who had basically, rejected all his really bad pickup lines, during the night. In a sense, what did she say? She said,
is that the best you got?
Oh, yeah, is that the best you got? And he's just kind of had this look on his face of just like horror and shock, that he was getting rejected. And he actually couldn't take it, and he left, And in a sense, we were kind of proud at that moment too, to realize that, that these women, it's so much more amazing and sexy to see that kind of confidence and that kind of environment to be so, what's the right way to say it? It's not traditional. It's not threatening. It's a way to
just be free.
To be free, yeah. So now this is like this is kind of compersion part 2, right? Where it's beyond just me feeling good about Alice. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be her wing woman now, right? And which I did. I ended up being her wing woman that night, talking to the guy she ended up hooking up with, and he just had this whole fascination about our relationship and about how did it get to that point. And wow, it's like, is this real that I'm talking, like, this is your girlfriend and you're okay with this happening? It's like, yeah. It's like, I go, look, you just have to talk to her and just be real, and she's going to be much more attracted to you that way and interested in having sex with you because she wants that kind of connection. She doesn't care about the stupid one-liners or
good conversation. You can get into my pants.
Yeah. and it did. And I think it was just a mind-blowing experience for the guy, because by the end of the night, after they had sex and he came back and he was just saying goodbye, his face was just sort of different. He just had like this half puzzled, half like satisfied look. But we were like, we just kind of giggled about the whole thing. It was just really, really funny. Just, taking like two very traditional, I guess, vanilla situations, right, and kind of turning it on its head. And that was a lot of fun. And we just sort of realized that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for sharing that.
Yeah. No, it's super fun. Go ahead.
I was going to say, are there any other, like anything, like kind of getting towards wrapping up here, like, is there anything that we haven't talked about that either of you really wanted to maybe share or say out into the podcast world or the world in general?
Well, I think we had like the one blooper.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to take that away from you. Go for it.
That's what I was going to ask. is if you had any bloopers.
Yeah, we have a very distinct one in mind.
Yes, from within our first year.
Yeah. So we met at a Christmas party, as we'd mentioned, right?
So we go back to that Christmas party the next year.
And yeah, a year later, we had gone through quite a bit, from me, baby stepping it through skinny dipping to, nude beach to Ibiza, and then through desire, right? And so by the end of that, we're like, man, we're on fire, right? We're just like, wow,
Let's
our
just
trajectory
go.
is just like, it's a rocket ship. We had started our Instagram account, and we had gotten a couple thousand followers by then. So this whole momentum of stuff and really fun stuff was happening to us. So we go back super confident to this Christmas party, and we were talking to one of those guys who had come back to another person who had met before, and Alice had met him at the previous year's party, the same year that we met, and had a little bit of conversation about poly and alternative relationships and stuff, but nothing too deep, But it's funny. So then, fast forward a year later, and he didn't know that we were together, I don't think, and he had brought his girlfriend. So we just started going right into the story because it was like, hey, look what's happened in the year. He talked about all this really interesting stuff. And like, look at our Instagram account, look at these pictures, right? Here's Alex like naked on a beach kind of stuff, and naked in front of the Eiffel Tower. Well, not naked. But it was a butt shot. But
Yeah.
anyway, and she goes, oh my goodness, that is just so appalling. How could anybody do that? And she had like this look of horror on her face, right? And we kind of looked at her and was like, seems like a little bit of overreaction, but okay. We just went with it. And then she kind of just,
Red flag number one.
Yeah, that's red flag number one. And so she kind of stomped off, and we didn't really talk, and it was just sort of a weird situation. Like, yeah, it's a party. It happens. We don't care. We were super confident. And so we just kind of carried on about our night. And then maybe about an hour and a half later, the guy comes back, and then he kind of whispers to me and goes, okay, we're ready. I'm like, what? And I was like, we're ready. And I was like, let's go upstairs. And I said, okay. So I go grab Alice. I go, Alice, he and his girlfriend want to go upstairs with us. And we're like, okay. Again, super confident. It's toward the end of the evening of the Christmas party. So there's probably been a few bottles of wine that are in everybody's system. And then, so go upstairs and we take off. We jump on this giant bed because we're staying in the house that the party was at. And it was a vanilla party. Let's just make absolutely clear.
Absolutely vanilla party.
Yeah. Extremely vanilla. But we go into their bedroom and take off all our clothes, and there's 4 naked people on the bed, and we're starting to like commingle and everything. And all of a sudden she just like sits up, like, just like struck by lightning. Yeah.
Out.
And freaks out. Right. So.
And she's going off on how she should get paid for this, and that's how she paid her way through college, and how then she starts going off about how she hates his kids, but yet she wants a ring, and she's just like ranting about all of this madness, and we just slide off the bed.
Well, what's even funnier is that she started this rant, and my face is like about 2 inches from her vagina, right? And I'm like down in between, and all of a sudden she just sits up, and I'm like, oh, what did I do, right? And we're just like, holy fuck.
I'm like, okay, we're going to get dressed and we're going to go now. And we just like threw our clothes on.
She's just like still ranting and just like yelling at him. And we're just like
screaming,
tiptoeing out. And we're like, all right. So the scream is going on the whole time. We get all our clothes back on, and we just kind of, I don't even make eye contact with either of them. We make ourselves, we go out the door. And then we see the host of the party, and they're like, hey, how you guys doing? How you doing?
We're like,
right?
oh, we gotta go.
I'm tucking in my shirt, and like, we gotta go. See you guys later. Like, oh, are you going so soon? I'm like, yeah, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Right? So, oh my God. Anyway,
wow.
But in hindsight, we just kind of laughed because we went through the 19 red flags that we just ran. We just ran 19 red lights all the way through that, just all these different times and the details. But yeah, we learned. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and luckily we've done a fairly better job vetting along the way.
Yeah.
Well, and it could have been a little worse. Like, it could have gone further, right? Like, I mean, like, at least you got out when you did.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to stick around and see how this plays out.
Yep.
No.
That's smarter than us. I'm sure we would have stuck around. Yeah. We'd have been there till like 4 a.m. Like, well, hey, we could recover. We could recover. That would be our first year selves. We would have been there way too long.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that you got out when you did, that's better than we did back then.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, everything's a learning experience, right? So
it is, and we've learned a lot of lessons.
Yes. And I just want to thank you both for coming on and just being as vulnerable and sharing everything you did. We really appreciate it. And just one more time, is there anything else you'd want to say before we end the episode?
I don't think so.
No. I guess just sort of like kind of bring it all around. The reason why we wanted to come on the podcast is that, I mean, you've had some great guests. We've had these tremendous stories, and we love hearing the stories on your podcast. And the one thing that in one of the episodes that resonated the most with me, though, was a mention of really all we want in life is just to have great friends who we could just be naked around and just be ourselves and be open and free. And whatever happens, happens. And everybody's probably going to be okay with it. Is really, it's freeing. It's probably the most freedom you can have with friends, right? And the fact that we've kind of built to that, and we've worked our way into this, and also the friends that we have now, and ironically, we just happened to meet through Instagram. But to me, that it's kind of like the pinnacle of relationships, and what we found, especially having been through divorces and been through unsatisfying, emotionally disconnected relationships, and living a long time with that. And then now to be able to rebuild it from the scratch, we're kind of really proud of really what we built. So, I guess in a lot of ways, it's all around a happy ending for us.
Not doing the things the way that you think society tells you have to do them.
Right.
Yeah.
And letting go of all that conditioning, and then realizing it's very rewarding. It's very gratifying. So.
Yeah. That's a great way to wrap it all up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, if you want to share the name of your Instagram, you can.
And we will put it in the show notes too for people if that's.
Yeah. It's the Buns Next Door.
It's all one word. THEBAE.
It's a private account right now, just because since Instagram is going to be cracking down, laying low, but it's normally public. And we are have a big enough following where we're able to put an 18 and over sensor on it to kind of do some filtration on that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yep. The Buns Next Door.
Awesome.
Yeah. And funny enough too, because we actually had started a different account, and that did get shut down by Instagram. That was really sad, actually.
This is like round 3.
Yeah. But we ended up connecting with the same people eventually anyway. Yeah. Everybody's on their 3rd or 4th account. So
you got to be creative with the names, come up with different ones.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Start tracking the older ones.
I know.
Well, thank you again. As Emma said, it's been fantastic, and my neck hurts from nodding so much. So yeah, we appreciate everything, and we're just really excited to get your story out there. So
Great.
Yeah,
really appreciate you having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, it's a delight. And sorry we couldn't do it in person. It was supposed to be, but hey, damn this COVID. So all right, well, have a wonderful night, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Bye.
And we're back. Thank you so much to Alice and Sam for reaching out and coming on this show and sharing everything that you did.
And for just being such positive,
badass people.
Amazing. Yeah, like just good vibes.
Yes.
Good vibes all around. So thank you for putting that out into the world. We love it. And thank you.
A quick reminder, our Patreon Q&A for February is tonight, February 24th. If you happen to miss it, we'll have another one in March, so don't worry.
And it will be recorded for Patreon members. So if you can still join. Like, there's still time. Time's ticking, but you got time.
If you're listening to this on February 24th.
You could join, check it out. If it's not for you, well, you don't have to stick around. You can cancel.
Yes.
We don't get offended. I mean, I get a little offended, but you'll never know.
If you want to join, follow the links in your little podcast player or go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the Patreon button. While you're on our website, go to the Contact Us page and leave us a voicemail or write us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
And again, thank you to Sam and Alice, and we will see you all in a week.
Yes.
Have a great week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.